Okay, so let's move on to how to create a frequency distribution table of quantitative data on our Jamovi. Now, we have to take note that usually in Jamovi, it's not particularly um, usable since we have the histogram and it automatically groups our quantitative variable. However, in the interest of the lecture, of course, we're going to do an FDT. However, for this case, we're just going to do it manually. So, how to do them manually? So, first, we proceed to create a new set of variable to group this numerical variable. So, we're just going to use this variable OPS as our example. We're going to use that to we're going to categorize them into groups. So to categorize them into groups, we have to know first how many classes we have to have, and of course, what would be the class width. And to proceed with the class width, we have to determine some information of our data. So one thing you have to know is what is the minimum, the maximum value of our data, and what would be the range. And for the range, it is just basically subtracting the maximum and minimum. So that is 1.145 minus 0.5930. If you don't want to subtract it, actually in this particular button on your Jamovi, you can just click on the range. So as you can see, here's now our range 0.5520. So for this, we have 145 data. And because we're just choosing between 5 and 20 when it comes to the number of classes, um, and for the interest of time, we're just going to proceed with 10 classes. So this will serve as a factor or a divisor for our class width to determine the class width. And for its dividend, we'll be using this range 0.5520. And 0.5520 divided by 10 is just simply 0.0552. And of course, on our data, as you can see in the data here on our OPS, it has three decimal places. We're just going to have the three decimal places 0.055. Um, for the data, usually we use the minimum value, so 0.593. But then just to cover some spaces, I have used 0.595. So predetermined, I have predetermined the range of values. And when I computed it, it is actually about 11 classes. So how do I determine that? So I just use an external application, an Excel, to determine that value. So here, so I use here 0.59 just to be safe. That would be the minimum value of the first group or the first class. And to determine the maximum value of the first class, we just have to add the class width of our data, and that is 0.055. However, if you add the 0.055, you're just putting on um, that value on our minimum value, and that is not actually the class width that we have. So what we're going to do is subtract just a decimal place before you proceed to the next one. We have three decimal places here, so we just subtract 0.001. And that will go across the table. So for the next number, of course, 0.644 is automatically on the first group. So the second group, it's not 0.644, but rather 0.645. That is by adding 0.001 from our previous group, the maximum value. And then the same as the previous group, we just add the class width minus 0.001. And then you just check that on up to the value that you have the group with its maximum value. And our maximum value here is 1.145. So in this case, 1.145 is in this range. So to do this on your Jamovi, we can have transform variable. And this is the categorization of, so let's say this is OPS categorization, and we're just going to use the OPS. So in this case, as you can see, it automatically copies the value of your OPS. However, we want to transform this. I have already selected the transformation. We have already have a lecture for this, for the transformation. However, just going to show you how I transform the data. So in this case, I have actually 11 conditions. So we have here a string variable for the data. And we use here the minimum value of each group. So to determine what would be for the range for the previous group. So for example, in this case, I use less than 0.645, but the group could be the first group. So that's how it works. So in the interest of time, I have already inputted all the transformations here. So you're free to pause the video if needed and copy this. So of course, we want to have a string variable for this. So just let's have it as an ordinal case and use the first transformation. Then you have this categorization. And after doing that, you can proceed to analysis again, and then exploration, then descriptives. And then you can just proceed analyzing the OPS categorization for your variable. As you can see, there is no particular values here since it has now become a categorical variable. And as you did from the previous module, you can just proceed to create this frequency table. So this is the frequency of your OPS categorization. So this will serve as an FDT of your quantitative data. However, as you count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there are only 9 groups. So there are missing categories. So as you can see, it skips from this to this. So some data or some groups, so 2 groups actually went missing. So this means that there are actually no player that's in the range of 1.03 up to 1.139 as its OPS or as their OPS. So that would be 0. So you can just put them into your table as you rewrite the table on your paper.